Cheers guys, Epyx911, welcome to the Elitist Geek and part 2 of my arcade cabinet. Yeah, it didn't cut out the previous video, it was probably just a USB that got disengaged. So basically this first video, or the first video and this second video, I'm just going to talk about the top half of the cab, and then I'll show more specific things about this cabinet in other videos. Alright, like I've got USB ports flush with the bottom of this control panel that you can't see. I've got additional control buttons for things like coin inserts, etc. My coin door works perfectly. You can put quarters in and that'll trigger credits. But most of the time, unless I'm having buddies over and specifically doing it, I will just use the buttons to insert coin. All right, let's talk about the types of emulation that I use on this cabinet. Now, I've had all kinds of front ends running on this. For those of you who don't know, a front end basically takes a lot of the work of an emulator, like configuration and games, after some initial setup, of course, and simplifies it. So you could have, for example, I could turn on the power on this arcade machine, it would boot up, it could go right into a front end, and all I would have to do with my joysticks is select the game, hit the fire button, and the game would start. I've used Maximus, I've used Hyperspin, I've used lots of front ends, Memoir, etc., etc. I always end up going back to just using my trackball as a mouse, which is the second reason I installed this trackball, was I want the flexibility to do whatever the hell I want on this arcade cabinet. Sometimes I use it for media. You know, I'll put something on the TV here when I'm on the exercise equipment. Not so much now that I've got the 50-inch LCD, but you know, it can be used for that, and it does get used for that. Sometimes I surf on here and I want to download drivers. Rather than swapping USB sticks back and forth, I can just do it right from this machine. I've also got a keyboard that can plug in, a USB keyboard. So not a problem. I can do all of that. Great flexibility that way. And I can manually select the type of emulation that I want to do. So for example, I've got MAME running on here. I just double left click. It will launch MAME. I've also got NES emulators, JNES. I've got Kega Fusion, which is a Sega Genesis emulator. I've got Raiden 3 to launch. I've got a bunch of indie games that take advantage of my Turbo Twist spinner, for example. A game called Typhoon, which is an awesome, awesome hobbyist take on Tempest. And it just thumps on this game. I'll play it actually on the video in a second. So, of course, all my favorites. So you could scroll through this list. I've got Satan's Hollow. I've got Robotron, which I can play. And that'll be the rare time, unless I've got somebody over, where I'll switch both 6 to 8-way so I can have a proper game of Robotron, right? Rastan, Shinobi, Shadow Force. I'm not going to read them all, obviously, but Top Gunner, Spelunker, Strikers, Raiden, Puzzle Bobble, Bubble Bobble, Kung Fu Master, Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, tons of games. So let's just launch one. I'm going to show you Galaga, for example. Let's load that. Now, I've chosen to put my monitor in what's called a horizontal placement. So what that means is the scan lines on games, for horizontal games, I will have horizontal scan lines, which is authentic for those games. A game like Ghost and Goblins will look arcade perfect because I also happen to be using an actual arcade monitor. It's a 27-inch Wells Gardner horizontal monitor. I have 2 of them. I had a backup unit. That backup unit will serve the foundation for my next arcade project, which will be a vertically orientated arcade cabinet, which just means that vertical games like Donkey Kong, Galaga are going to look arcade perfect. I play them on this, but I play them in horizontal orientation, which means the scan lines go in the wrong direction. Now, if you're not as anal as me about those types of things, in fact, some people will use LCD screens to do their arcades. Fine. For me personally, I wanted the visual aspect of my arcade cabinet to be close to as close as possible to how those original games ran and looked. And I think I've achieved that with this machine. So what will happen when I have my second cab built is that one will be dedicated to all the MAME vertical games. This cabinet will be dedicated to all the horizontal games. So you can see here we're loading up Galaga. And this should still sound decent. I've got my Blue Yeti mic here, kind of picking up the sound from the side, and that's pretty loud. But again, I've got a volume dial here. Let's add a quarter. And let's start the game. Oh shit, that brings me back. That is fucking nostalgia, guys, right there. One of my all-time favorite games, Galaga. I don't mind the remakes and the sequels, but Galaga, the original, is still probably one of my favorite. I'm not going to play the whole game, but you get the gist of it. Let's die. You'll hear why I like having the subwoofer in this cabinet. Nice bassy def. It's really visceral that way. Now, I've got secondary functions for all my buttons so that I didn't have to clutter the control panel with additional buttons. So holding player 1 and tapping player 2 does an exits you back. And then of course I just use my trackpad or trackball to select games. So I've got literally hundreds that I play on MAME. If we look at a modern game, like if we take a look at Raiden 3, let's just load that real quick so you can see what that looks like. This is a gorgeous game, and it, of course, is going to run much better on my dedicated vertical cabinet. But let's just take a look. You can see. There we go. It loads fairly quickly. And got to remember start on here. There we go. Oh, I was on quick. There we go. Game start. So I'm going to crank this a bit. But you can hear that, eh? Sounds terrific. This is such a gorgeous game. So really, like I said, I love the range. I want to be able to play Galaga, and 5 minutes later, I want to play a game like this. And yeah, of course you can set up front ends to do that, but I'm the kind of guy that gets bored with the same wallpaper. So this just gives me the flexibility that I need, right? So I don't mind seeing my desktop. So there we go. So that's exit again. Let's quit. Boom, we're back to the desktop. What else do I have on here, and what else can I talk about with this arcade cab? She's a beast. The control panel is also laminated with that same vertical grade countertop laminate. All right, I've got MAME. Let's take a look at that Typhoon. I think you guys will love this one. It's called Typhoon 2100, I believe. Check, like, listen to that sound. It just fucking thumps. I love it. This is the kind of game that, I kid you not, you got the lights off. This is just awesome. You think I sound a little ecstatic? That's because I am. Because this is a freaking awesome game. Check this out. This is with the spinner. So if any of you have a PlayStation Vita, Jeff Minter, who makes a mean Tempest clone, created a game called TXK on the Vita, which I highly, highly recommend. But if you've got your own arcade cabinet that has a trackball, what the fuck are you doing? Install it. Look at this shit. It's fucking awesome. That's all I can say. Awesome. Let's exit out of there. And get back to desktop. There we go. All right. What else is there? Well, I've got stuff like Rogue Legacy on here. Plays great on an arcade cabinet. SNES 9X. WinUAE, which is an Amiga emulator, which kicks ass. Super Street Fighter 4. Holy shit. Another game that Capcom kind of shit the bed on in terms of, at first, it wasn't very friendly for arcade enthusiasts like myself because you couldn't reprogram the keystrokes for buttons and stuff, but hacks and future versions did improve on that. So right now it just plays fucking fantastic. I've got the NES emulator on here, Bionic Commando Rearmed, which is an awesome remake of the game. PlayStation emulator, PlayStation 2 emulator runs fine on this, and you'd be surprised. There were some awesome shooters on the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 1 that play fantastic with arcade controls like this. Another fantastic machine, Dreamcast and its emulator, which I also have on here. And of course the Sega Genesis. A lot of those platformer games, they play very, very well with an arcade joystick. People who grew up playing them with a gamepad, you're probably not going to be comfortable on it. You just prefer your emulator on a computer with a gamepad, or of course the original console. But for me, I love playing a game like Batman on the NES. Let's just load that up really, really quick. That'll be the last one I look at on this video. Let's see if we can find it fairly quickly here. If I can't, I will stop. Let's see. Let's see, ROMs. I think I have it on a different one. Emulation. Nope. Anyways, I'll do that on another video. But Batman on the NES is one of my favorite platformers of all time. Kicks ass on an arcade cabinet. It's just like it was meant to be played on one. So there you have it, guys. That's part 2 of my arcade cab video. I will show you guys more of the rest of the cab in part 3 and 4. Oh, the side of the cabinet. I forgot if we're talking about the top here. So I've mentioned the speaker grills. I'm using, I believe they're 14-inch neon speaker rings that light up with that freaking awesome green neon lighting. Again, when I turn the lights off on this thing, it looks fantastic. Joysticks lit up, trackball lit up. So those were cut. I created my own device to allow me to use my wood saw and cut perfect circles, which I believe I documented. So if you go to arcadecontrols.com and you type in aliens themed cabinet, or just go to my YouTube video, I believe I have a link to the project itself, which has a lot more details on the technical specifics on how this was built. Let's look at my duplicate, which is still here. So there we go, guys. So I was just using the webcam software to record this. As always, thanks for watching. If you like this video and future videos, hit subscribe. It's going to be a hell of a cool ride to watch me build that arcade cabinet moving forward, that dedicated vertical one. And I'm going to have more videos dealing with this cab specifically. And of course, the usual things that I do in my channel: game reviews, playthroughs, tech reviews, and really anime, whatever the hell crosses my mind. But those are generally the topics I deal with. As always, cheers, guys.